We look to superheroes because they're extraordinary and, well, super. They're these fantastic, powerful beings that use their powers to help others who are in need, so when we hear about their weaknesses, it reminds us that they aren't all perfect. Everyone, even superheroes, have at least one weakness. However, sometimes these weaknesses catch us by surprise. We've compiled a list of some lesser-known weaknesses of some of our favorite superheroes. But before we get started on that list, make sure to fly on over to that subscribe button to stay informed and up to date with all things CBR.
It is futile to imagine you can win. Give up, Diana.
Wonder Woman, Bondage. Wonder Woman is one of the most badass superheroes ever. Wouldn't you agree? This Amazon can do it all and then some. We've been pretty much obsessed with this feminist icon since her inception, and when her solo film hit theaters, fans were not disappointed. This awesome Amazon warrior has taken on gods and won. But this powerful icon wasn't always the badass feminist we've come to know and love. Wonder Woman creator William Moulton Marston had some very different ideas about the amount of power men should be able to have over women back in the day. He had an affinity for bondage and included as much of it in the comics as possible.
What is a secretary?
Ooh, well, I do everything. I go where he tells me to go and I do what he tells me to do.
Oh, well, where I'm from, that's called slavery.
I really like her.
So naturally, in a land ruled by women, a super powerful Amazonian princess could easily be neutralized by any member of the greater sex. All any man had to do was tie up her wrists. This made her as weak as any other human woman. This ridiculous weakness unfortunately continued from 1941 all the way through the mid-80s, where it was retconned. That's 40 years of insulting weaknesses. Thankfully, Wonder Woman is now one of the coolest and strongest heroes she was always meant to be. Venom, a cigarette lighter. One of the most well-known, terrifying, and deadliest villains in the Spider-Verse is definitely Venom. Venom is known for being ruthless and cruel. The symbiote has also been known to go from host to host, bringing out the worst in everyone. Initially, Venom started out bonding with Spider-Man, creating the awesome, power-enhancing black costume. But this symbiote is actually an evil alien entity and was later rejected by Spider-Man. Venom ends up bonding with Eddie Brock as they share a mutual hatred of Peter Parker, and after bonds with anyone who hates Spidey and Peter. Hell hath no fury like a symbiote scorned.
When the symbiote takes your body, it takes your mind too.
Turns out this psychotic killer is extremely vulnerable to heat and loud noises. When it comes to fire, Venom goes from terrifying threat to screeching coward in seconds. Understandable, fire is destructive, but we aren't talking about blowtorches here. One time, Venom was about to kill Spidey, and some random guy shows up and tosses him a cheap lighter. The symbiote loses its mind and jumps back in sheer terror.
Really weird.
This weakness is so laughable that even the other villains make fun of him. But the question on all our minds is, why doesn't Spidey keep a lighter on him at all times?
I've been lost for so long, but now I need some air.
Aquaman Dehydration. Arthur Curry, or Aquaman as he is more commonly known, is the Atlantean human hybrid hero in the Justice League. As one of the oldest superheroes in the comic book world and one of the founding members of the League, you'd think he'd be widely popular, but that's not the case. He hasn't really been taken seriously, and many consider him to be the weakest link among the Justice League members. Aquaman actually has some pretty awesome powers, like superhuman strength and hearing, controlling the weather, night vision, withstanding bone-crushing pressure, and much more. We think Aquaman's pretty awesome and can't wait to see him on the big screen. But he does have a bit of hindrance when it comes to being away from water.
A little heat and you dry right up, don't you?
He is Aquaman after all. As he is sort of an aquatic species and draws his power from water, he needs to stay hydrated for his powers to work. If the Atlantean king is dehydrated, his powers weaken, and after a certain point, he loses his power and can even lead to his death. We guess in this case, it doesn't pay to be a fish out of water.
Supergirl?
Yes. And no. Friends call me Taya. Are you a friend?
Power Girl. Any natural, unprocessed material. In a world where organic is the latest craze, one girl dares to defy the odds. It's Power Girl. The on-off cousin of Superman should be a badass hero, don't you think? She should be pretty much unstoppable. She has the exact same powers as Supes after all. Plus, she has a strong personality to boot. Power Girl sounds like an awesome hero. What could possibly be the issue here? Well, there's one teeny tiny problem with this powerful woman, and that is her very different weakness. It's unfortunately way more common than a radioactive rock.
It's complicated.
She is vulnerable to any and all raw, unprocessed materials. Oh yes, you heard that right.
Wow.
This inorganic girl revealed her lame setback after she was impaled by a tree branch. Supergirl helps yank out the branch, and Power Girl reveals that sticks and stones really can break her bones. So her weakness is any raw, unprocessed material, meaning if it's on Earth and it's not man-made, it can hurt her.
You alright?
She's bulletproof, sure, but throw a rock at her and she's done for. Hey, we all have our weaknesses, who are we to judge? We just like our heroes a little more super. What do you think?
Breathe it in. That's fear.
Superman. Pink kryptonite. The most iconic and world-famous superhero is definitely Superman. Superman is an alien from the planet Krypton who has the most incredible powers. From being bulletproof to incredible strength, there's nothing Superman can't do. With someone so powerful, it's hard to believe that he would have any sort of weakness, but it turns out he does. As we all know, his weakness is the green rock known as kryptonite. It's pretty lame that he's allergic to rocks from his home planet, especially considering it doesn't affect humans too much, excluding Lex Luthor, of course. But it turns out that there are different variations of kryptonite, and each one affects the Man of Steel differently. Red kryptonite makes him morph into embarrassing shapes and have psychedelic visions. Silver makes him a hungry drunk, and pink makes him super effeminate and flamboyant. His exposure to pink kryptonite happens in the storyline from Supergirl Volume 4, number 79, and takes place in an alternate Earth 1. It's unbelievable that probably the most powerful superhero can be controlled and brought down by colorful rocks.
Your mind is scattered. Worry about yourself. You're the one without powers.
Green Lantern. Yellow. Although there was a failed attempt at telling Hal Jordan's story, we're going to say that Green Lantern is pretty cool. Hal has protected the Earth from numerous threats through sheer force of will. In the comic book world, Hal is one of the most impressive wielders of the Power Ring. However, the Power Ring does have some flaws, like having no effect on the color yellow. Oh yes, you heard that right. This all-powerful ring is rendered useless by the color of sunshine. This is all due to an impurity in the Green Lantern's rings. It was later revealed that this lame weakness was because Parallax, a yellow fear entity, was trapped in the Lantern Corps' central power battery. But that didn't stop other comic book heroes from mocking him mercilessly.
How is the enchantment broken?
With a word.
Speak the word.
Shazam!
Captain Marvel Jr. Saying his own name. Superheroes often have a secret identity or a normal human alias. It's pretty important and logical if you think about it. There's one superhero who has a bit of an issue keeping his identity a secret. Captain Marvel Jr. has to take a few extra steps to keep his identity a secret. He can't say his own name. If Captain Marvel Jr. says his name for whatever reason, he transforms into an ordinary young man who needs a crutch to walk named Freddie Freeman. And transversely, if he speaks his superhero alias while he's Freddie Freeman, he'll transform into the muscular crime fighter in front of everyone.
Say something.
Shazam!
Pretty inconvenient as Freddy works in a newsroom. Can you say goodbye secret identity? That would surely make front page news. This is probably one of the most inconvenient ways to turn into a superhero. How do you even introduce yourself? That must be incredibly frustrating, don't you think?
The scarf looked better. Nice ears.
They're horns.
Daredevil. Loud noises. In the case of Matt Murdock, his loss of vision took away the natural sense of sight, and so it was replaced with echolocation, which is basically kind of like a radar sense that allows him to see through sound. Sounds pretty cool, right? But remember, this sense is now heightened, which means that Murdock also has an incredible sensitivity to loud, unexpected noises and even funky smells. Daredevil can kick some major butt, but will inevitably be brought down by his senses being overpowered, like with a stink bomb or some crazy supersonic sound. Daredevil has been knocked unconscious by the repeated reverberations of high-pitched sounds. Needless to say, these loud noises left him totally vulnerable.
That would save time.
You don't really want to walk around on fire for the rest of your life, do you?
Is that a trick question?
The Human Torch. Asbestos. The Fantastic Four films have been subpar, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the Marvel films. But in all actuality, they're pretty powerful, especially Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch. He can create, absorb, and even manipulate fire, and his Nova Flame gets hot enough to vaporize anything that stands in his way. Bad guys beware. We're looking at you, Venom. There's just one exception to his powers, and that's asbestos. The carcinogenic mineral was not considered evil in the 60s like it is today. In that era, asbestos was used as the ideal flame retardant. So it only made sense that a superhero with fire powers be faced with an opponent named Asbestos Man, right? Asbestos Man beats the Human Torch, until he develops mesothelioma from wearing the suit. He eventually ends up needing an oxygen tank to stay alive and develops cancer. In 2012, he was praised by the California Asbestos Legal Center as he helped draw attention to the dangers of asbestos covered up by the evil asbestos industry. Turns out that this weakness helped raise awareness. Not too shabby.
I am Thor, son of Odin, and as long as there is life in my breast, I am running out of things to say. Are you ready?
Thor. 60 seconds. Aside from being popular, the mighty God of Thunder has some pretty awesome abilities. He can control the weather, has super strength and endurance, opens portals to other dimensions, and a slew of other powers. Most of these are thanks to his mighty magical hammer Mjolnir. One of the most famous enchantments on the hammer is the Worthiness Clause, which pretty much ensures that only someone who is worthy can wield the hammer. The hammer will also return to Thor when summoned, and it can be used to fly by throwing it and holding onto the handle. Pretty sweet, right? In the original canon, it was said that if Thor lost physical contact with his hammer for more than 60 seconds, he would instantly turn back into his human alter ego, Donald Blake.
His name is Donald Blake?
Dr. Donald Blake.
Also, if someone worthy came along and took the hammer first, they could claim Thor's powers. Which sucks, because Thor's preferred combat method is throwing his hammer and pinning down some baddies. Thankfully, they got rid of this silly 60-second rule in 1984.
It's terribly well balanced. Well, if there's too much weight, you lose power on the swing.
Well, there you have it, folks. Those were some of the superhero weaknesses you might not have known about. What did you think? Which was a surprise? And did we miss any? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and share, and check out more in our awesome playlist. While you're here, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, thanks for watching.